So, coming off of a video by the YouTuber Sargon of Akkad, I've decided to check out the channel Game/Show with resident hipster racist Jamin Warren. Now, if we just look at his channel, what are the first videos advertised? A video on a casual game, a video talking about a feminist that everyone other than racist hipsters hate, which, by the way, I'm in the middle of making a video on this specific feminist as to why so many people other than gamers hate her. A video asking if it's weird to play as the opposite gender, which, going by the example given, yes, it is abnormal for Mass Effect players to toy with character customization. I happen to be part of that fringe group, however, creativity drives players, such as myself, to create custom characters, not identity politics. Moving on, a video about graphics, a video on games being a spiritual experience. Well, for those of us that have been gamers far longer than we've been atheists, the short answer is no. Okay, well, so far I'm bored. Nothing about this channel interests me as a gamer, an atheist, a political junkie leftist, or an individualist. All I see is this dumb-looking asshole, his non-prescription jag-off glasses surrounded by gaming identifiers. All of this screams of poser cunt. In many ways, Jamin here is a lot like Anita Sarkeesian in that all this asshole does is talk about games. You never see these Anita types actually playing games, just talking, dressing like posers, and then buying all sorts of bullshit merchandise. Oh, look at this. I found what is sure to be a gem. An Ideologue talking about his ideology. A word of warning, though, because this is an 11-minute video, and, considering the fact that I'm responding to this video, I might take a while.
Let's talk about how I became a video game feminist. Here we go. So over the life of this show, you might have noticed that I come back to the same types of issues again and again. It could be race or sexuality, but the one that is often the most charged is gender.
Spoiler, it's because he's an ideologue and not a gamer.
And from time to time, I get commenters who say stuff like, I liked Game Show when he just talked about video games, not any of this social justice stuff. But here's the rub. Games are not a separate part of our existence. They're a product of our time, place, and culture, wherever that may be.
Whoa there, Motormouth. First, whose culture? There isn't just a homogenous culture. I'm assuming you mean American culture, which leaves out hundreds of millions of gamers overseas out of what you're saying, but even there you're wrong. Gaming is a subculture. We check off all the requirements to be a subculture. So speaking only of Americans, there are average Americans and then there are gamers, a subculture within the United States and all throughout the world. The fact that you dress like a total poser proves that at least subconsciously you're aware that gamers have a style and norms to adhere to.
No medium transcends its context, not even video games, as much as I would like them to. So sometimes they reflect amazing aspects of our culture, and sometimes, intentional or not, they reinforce some of its flaws.
What the fuck are you talking about? In what way does foreign-made games reflect the cultural context of New York? How does The Witcher reflect my culture? In what way does Danganronpa or Catherine reflect my life in any way, shape, or philosophical fucking concept? Even in the case that a game was made in New York State, about New York State culture, it doesn't change the fact that we're discussing fictional fucking content, you pseudo-intellectual cunt. It could be about anything.
And this means games are part of one of the most pointed, contentious, and important movements of the last 100 years, assuring women a place alongside men in every conversation. This may be hard to accept. Sometimes you likely feel helpless or under attack. Sometimes it feels impossible to both love games and be critical of them. But that's what it means to be a critic of games, and hopefully a game show viewer as well. To be able to look at the medium we love and ask really hard questions, like how we can be better at treating women equally in the world of games. Besides, talking about gender has been really important to us at Game Show. I mean, we want a telly for it.
So you've been awarded for bad behavior in the past, and now you're incentivized in pursuing accolades rather than actually representing the subculture. I'm starting to understand your channel a bit more there, Jamin.
But today, I wanted to give you a little more context for why I talk about gender and the role of women in the world of games.
Are we just going to ignore that last part where you earned an award and how that incentivized you to actually continue to do what you do? Okay.
Or put another way, how I became a video game feminist. A little bit of background. Back in 2008, I rediscovered video games. They had been a big part of my life as a teen, whiling away countless hours playing Quake in my school's computer lab. When I got to college, it was pretty much all Smash Brothers, with friends on the N64, which I've talked about before. Then I just stopped playing.
Easy answer. It's because you aren't a gamer. Gaming for you was burning some time with friends. That's it. I know how this is going to sound, but I really don't like Nintendo games. Call me paranoid, but I think that the majority of people that cite Nintendo fandom do so as a means to try to appear as an old school gamer, rather than the obvious that they're either a casual player or an outright poser. Jamin here is just another example to me that if you aren't a gamer but want to fit in, you point to Nintendo. If I told you that I got into gaming through Telltale games, would you nod your head and say, oh, that guy is definitely a hardcore gamer? No. You'd say, oh, this guy's a fucking poser and a walking simulator fan. Rightly so, because Telltale games are casual as fuck, just like the massive majority of contemporary Nintendo games. Whatever, just continue.
I'm not really sure why. Maybe it was a lack of easily available friends to play with. Maybe I was just 22 and trying really hard to grow up. And if I hadn't decided to start covering games at the Wall Street Journal, I might not have returned at all. This new world of games was exciting to me, and it was an amazing time for games writ large. You had big marquee titles like BioShock and Assassin's Creed that were opening up new destinations, and you had smaller titles like Braid and Flower that were doing brave, experimental things. I then started interviewing game designers like Hideo Kojima and reviewing games in the Wall Street Journal for my own, well, short-lived column. And as I got deeper, I started spending more time around games and game makers, not just as a consumer, but as a professional journalist. That meant early access to games, closed-door interviews, and a lot of industry events. The moment that it first struck me that games had a gender problem was when I watched a very senior male producer grab another female producer's butt at an official company party. I should have done something, but I didn't. I froze up, and I'm embarrassed about my inaction to this very day. And that was when I started noticing things about how women were being treated in the world of games, because I saw versions of that interaction over and over and over again.
Okay, so one instance of bad behavior from one individual changed your perspective to indict the industry as a whole and gamers as a subculture as having problems with chauvinism. Even if I believe you, which I don't, I think that story's bullshit and you just invented it to justify your ideology. What it says is, you have a massive problem with assuming the worst in people. I've never in my life sexually assaulted a person, and I doubt anywhere close to even a fraction of a percentage of gamers have. The average man does not physically grope a woman without their permission. So to say that gamers, of all fucking people, a subculture stereotyped as introverted and isolated, have a higher chance of sexually assaulting women is fucking mental. You have to be as thick as a fucking pallet of bricks to believe that specifically gamers are somehow collectively responsible for the actions of one convention goer, a person that was more likely some corporate cocksucker with an aggressive personality.
There were booth babes at E3. Not that booth babes are particular to the gaming industry, but I remember one for the racing game Dirt, who was actually covered in dirt. The gaming industry seemed to have a laser focus aimed at attracting males, straight males to be more specific. The booth babes were designed to exclusively attract male attention, even though there are lots of women who have just as deep a passion, just as deep a love of games. If you're thinking that simply because it's mostly men or teenage boys who play games and that's why you see booth babes, etc., you're totally wrong, period. If you want to debate that, we did a whole episode about it. Seriously, right there.
Yeah, fuck you. Your numbers are biased. There have been countless videos showing the errors in the ESA numbers. They fit your narrative, which is why you cite them. They're not just games. People playing Candy Crush make you a consumer of games, but not necessarily a gamer. And we're talking about gamers here, are we not? Who else are you attempting to persuade dressed like this? Which demographic of non-gamers are buying BioShock, Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, and the countless other best-selling games? Nice try, dickhead, but nothing relating to the number of women playing games on their phone remotely relates to the subculture. If you had clearer statistics, you may have an argument. Keyword being may have an argument, but you don't. The aggregate figures of video game sales with no specificity to the genre does not mean anything in lieu of the subculture.
At some level, I've probably always been a feminist in the sense that I believe in gender equality, but I wouldn't describe myself as someone who was outspoken. But after all that time being around how games are made, it really dawned on me how big the problem really was. And over the several years that it took for that to sink in, I began to notice a host of new, not so great things about our beloved medium.
Bullshit. You named one instance of sexual assault that you admit to being too much of a fucking coward to call out. It was one event that I doubt even happened, and you think that it justifies your bias? Fuck you, man. You are a fucking bigot against gamers. You think we cheered on the guy, but you were the one that sat there and fucking let it happen without response. You're the one that's allowing chauvinism to occur. You, not me, not gamers. You are the pussy allowing women to be sexually harassed.
most of which are pretty obvious if you're a woman who loves games. And after realizing these things, it started to change what I actually wanted to spend time with in games. Women as sex symbols or props started to feel stale, and I started to seek out different experiences with more relatable female leads. Then there's the more implicit stuff that starts to get questioned. When I started covering games, I realized that in some ways I was a minority because I'm not white.
What does it matter that you aren't white? Who would have ever known had you not made an issue of it? You're going to hear people that say racist shit while talking over a VoIP, but that's just part of gaming culture. It could be shit talk, it could be trolling, it could be someone attempting to just poke fun at race. I do it all the time. I mock asshole New Yorkers and rednecks all the time while playing games. I've heard gamers, especially Americans, mock race as a concept for years. The only person that takes race seriously here is you, the hipster racist.
But in other ways, I'm part of a giant, overwhelming majority because I'm male. When I went to video game events or parties, they're almost exclusively male. I hadn't been around that many guys in a single room since my days at an all-male high school.
So which is it? Are all women gamers or not? You disingenuous cunt. You just cited the bullshit numbers saying that women represent half of the consumer base. You are either dumb as fuck or fucking malignant.
These functions were my introduction to privilege. It's much easier to be in that 95% of guys than in the 5% of females. I can't imagine what it would be like to be a woman in that context. Here's the point. Privilege isn't a zero-sum game. It depends on context. I was a mixed kid, which has a historical legacy and a burden, but I'm also a man, which makes a lot of things easier. I'm far less likely to experience abuse, and I have a much easier time being taken seriously.
The nice shoes are gonna make my feet hurt. The sneakers are the most comfortable, and I've got an 11-hour day coming, but are they gonna take me seriously if I want? These are conversations that happen.
Oh, cry. I have to look professional in a professional environment. I make money doing a cushy press gig for one of the most corrupt, cronyist industries in America. Take that, Dad, you privileged shitlord. How dare you oppress women by working your blue-collar job that eventually crippled you for menial pay? Being a white working-class man is so privileged, unlike being a dumpy, opinionated cocksucker with an easy-as-fuck white-collar job where you bitch about video games being demeaning to women.
That changed how I thought and saw games. I started looking for new voices and to use the platform I had to push different voices to the front. And as it turns out, there's a wealth of writers and game makers trying innovative things as a reflection of this gender imbalance. Folks like Nina Freeman and the girls behind Tampon Run are showing different untold perspectives. And when I read game histories, the contributions of women came right out front. It could be Grace Hopper, the First Lady of Code, or Corinne Yu, who helped design the Halo engine. It's all there, you just gotta look. I want to be clear that I'm far from perfect. Sexism is something that's bigger than you and me, and we carry biases whether we like it or not. For example, why is 90% of game shows viewership male?
Again! Are you fucking kidding me? You cite that women are a critical portion of the gaming demographic, and yet you continue to offer evidence that implies the exact opposite. You are dumb as fuck. You aren't malevolent. Only a person with a plastic ball bouncing around his fucking empty head would be unable to see why this doesn't make sense.
Maybe there's some implicit thing that I'm doing to not make the show more welcoming to the millions of female gamers out there. And when researching the show, we don't always do a good job of balancing the voices we draw upon or the characters we highlight on screen. It's also important to know that feminism isn't just one thing or one idea. There are lots of strong and sometimes contradictory voices inside the world of feminism, so you can't just paint it with one big brush.
Yes, except one of them actually has coherent arguments, but is labeled a conservative bitch and demonized relentlessly by feminists. The other is treated like a fucking saint, despite being a total incendiary asshole that labels people like me as terrorists.
Nor do women need men to save them from the explicit and implicit sexism in the world of games. Not to mention, there are lots of places that you can go to learn more. I'll link to some in the description, including this great video from Jessica Lee about how you can be an ally.
I don't want to be an ally. I want to be an individual. Nothing you've said has any substance to it. This is all inane shit. I am losing intelligence watching these fucking videos.
At the end of the day, I believe that it's entirely possible to both love games and want them to be better, to acknowledge that they're not some separate thing from the world, but a way to challenge ourselves and push forward. So I hope this gives you some broader context for why I talk about gender from time to time. Because I mean, come on, it's not really that often. Regardless, I hope that your personal experiences lead you down the same road that I'm on. maybe we can walk it together.
And that's 7 minutes of fucking feminist drivel. You are tiring to watch. Do you realize that, Jamin? You are draining the idealism from me. In 7 minutes, what can feminism do to provide Americans with a more fulfilled life? Nothing. Absolutely fucking nothing. Your head is as empty as the ideology that you follow.